Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's bonus Tragic Star of the Week video. We're going to be talking today about John Barrymore. Once again, my channel is completely AI free. So let's take a look at John Barrymore's short and turbulent life.
Hey everybody, I'm giving a little bit of a bonus video. I'm going to talk about the famous actor John Barrymore, who came from a very famous acting family, the Barrymore family. Most of them were stage actors before he was born. His great-grandmother, I believe, owned an acting theater troupe. So he was born into acting royalty. He grew up in Long Island, born in Philadelphia, but grew up in Long Island. And he said that he and his brother lived a Robinson Crusoe existence there on the massive property on Long Island. He was known as the Great Profile. He had two other siblings, Lionel and Ethel Barrymore, who became famous actors in their own right. And John was the youngest, and he was the most handsome. They known as the Great Profile. I don't think I count as a Great Profile, but he was known as the Great Profile in films and on the stage. He actually had a very successful stage career and considered films, slumming it. So, because he was born into Hollywood, acting royalty, stage royalty, that's where he originally wanted to make his mark. But at the same time, his whole family were great stage actors, his parents, his grandparents, his siblings. So he kind of wanted to distinguish himself as well. He got into a little bit of a romantic scandal when he was just still a teenager, where he started courting the famous Evelyn Nesbit, the showgirl, who married a wealthy man and then became romantically involved with the very famous architect Stanford White. And it turned out that they had a passionate affair. And this was all at the time when apparently she was seeing Barrymore as well. And he was just a kid. I think he was only like 17, 18 years old at the time. So she got around, Evelyn Nesbit. She was having an affair with Stanford White, and he was a prominent architect. And her husband shot and killed him. And I guess there was going to be a big trial, and Barrymore was going to be dragged into this, and he was going to have to testify, but it never happened. The husband pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity or something, and they put him away for a little while, so he didn't have to actually go and testify. So that was an interesting little tidbit of John Barrymore's life that maybe a lot of people didn't know. Eventually, of course, he did go from the stage to the screen, as we all know. Very early films. He was only acting when Broadway went, quote, dark, and he would act in films starting from about 1912 onwards. He's one of the silent screen's very earliest actors.
One of his best known roles was as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and I think the very first film version of this story. He was amazing in this movie, and people were shocked at the transformation and ran screaming from the theater, or so it was rumored.
Made a wonderful impression in almost everything that he did. He starred with all the famous stars in the 1920s. He gave John Gilbert a run for his money, both in the romantic lead department and in the drinking department. They were both famous party boys, and then the partying became alcoholism later on. So John Barrymore, he also had a way with the ladies. He married several times, but one of his first relationships and marriage was with Dolores Costello, and he had 2 children with her, John Drew Barrymore and a daughter named Diana Barrymore, and both of these children would turn out to be alcoholics and dysfunctional, particularly Diana Barrymore. She died very young, early 30s. John Drew Barrymore claimed that after his mother and father divorced, he only saw his father one time after that. Which is not surprising, since he didn't live much past 1942. So, of course, he's the grandfather of actress Drew Barrymore, who's named after both her father and her grandfather. And Drew also went down the path of alcoholism and dysfunctionalism, but she pulled herself up by her bootstraps and she seems to be okay now, so that's good. Back to John Barrymore. He was a famous stage actor. He did Shakespeare, he did Mercutio and Romeo and Juliet, but he did also very many films that made a lot of money. And he was known as a romantic lead. Everybody loved John Barrymore. But then things began to slide for him. He made the talkies fine because he had a theatrical voice, kind of like what John Gilbert had, but for some reason it didn't. John Gilbert's voice was slightly higher pitched, so that it didn't go over very well. John Barrymore had this theatrical way of speaking, and it just lended an air of sophistication to his roles. But he slowly began to slide into alcoholism, and he began to forget his lines. And this was unheard of for this guy because he's known as having like a photographic memory. He wasn't that old when this was going on either, and he began to forget his lines. So because he started having to read his lines from cue cards, he began being cast in lesser films. But the exception to this was the fabulous movie Grand Hotel, in which he starred as a broken down actor on his last leg, an alcoholic, an incurable addict, opposite Greta Garbo, who's trying to help him and loves him so much, but she can't save him from himself, and then he ends up committing SC at the end of the film by turning on the gas in his hotel room and asphyxiating himself. So that's he kind of played himself in Grand Hotel, which was a big picture with a lot of stars. We've talked about Grand Hotel multiple times on this channel. It had Greta Garbo, so we talked about it when we were doing Greta Garbo. It had Joan Crawford, so we talked about it when we were doing Joan Crawford. It had John Barrymore. Now we're talking about it while we're doing John Barrymore. It was just a really fabulous, amazing film. It was the last film that he really did, he really made, where it was a big picture, and he got pretty good reviews, mostly because he was literally playing himself. So John Barrymore sadly sunk into kind of dysfunctionalism very early in his 50s, early 50s. And by 1940, he was pretty much a gone alcoholic and unable to function anymore, and essentially drinking himself to death. Interestingly, he outlived John Gilbert by about 6 years. John Gilbert died in, I think, 1936, and John Barrymore died in 1942. So a little bit longer lived, which was surprising. But I just wanted to talk about a little bit about something that had always been rumored, and Errol Flynn had written about it in his book, My Wicked, Wicked Ways. They were great drinking buddies, Errol Flynn and John Barrymore. And Errol Flynn claims that one day he came home after from the Cock and Bull, which is a famous bar in Hollywood. He came home after drinking and toasting his dead friend, and when he got back, he was going to pour himself another drink because he wasn't drunk enough, and he went to the bar, and somebody had stolen John Barrymore's body and propped it up on a chair in his living room, and he just about fainted and had a heart attack when he saw it. Now, several people say that Raoul Walsh was the one that carried out the prank, and there's others that say someone else did it. I think that in the version where Errol Flynn actually talks about it himself and says this really happened, that it was Raoul Walsh, famous actor of the 40s, who actually carried out the stunt. I don't know, seems a little far-fetched, but kind of seems like something that would happen only to Errol Flynn, in like Flynn. We'll talk about him some other day. Anyway, so John Barrymore died. He was only 60 years old when he died, but he looked like about 70. Died from acute alcoholism, essentially. And and there's another interesting thing about him. He has 2 graves. Not everyone can say that. He was buried at the Calvary Cemetery out there in Los Angeles. It's a Catholic cemetery where his brother and sister are buried. He has a tomb out there. And so he was buried out there. But I guess he never wanted to be buried there. So John Drew Barrymore in 1980 had his remains disinterred and brought back to the family plot in Philadelphia in a cemetery called Mount Vernon. Now, I have seen the grave and it looks neglected out there, and people have told me that that cemetery is terribly managed and it's actually so badly decayed out there that the cemetery itself has been closed to the public. I don't know if this is true, but this is what I heard. So, yeah, that's the sad, brief story, quick video of John Barrymore. I appreciate you coming on and bothering to watch the entire video. I need the watched hours. I am not an AI, so sometimes I fumble and sometimes I make mistakes, but at least I'm a human and not a robot. And so I really hope you appreciate the non-AI content I provide. If so, please like and subscribe. I also have 3 books, on Amazon. There's a link in the description of the channel for the books, and they're on Amazon.com under my name. So I really appreciate you following me, and I will see you guys next week.